So, formal hello and welcome everyone from me as well. I'm happy that you all joined us for this discussion. As Anya introduced me, my name is Tamara. I'm an educator in organizational culture, an advisor. I work with companies and large universities, and also my own school through which we provide online executive education for the people who would like to gain a deeper, longer program in organizational culture and would like to become culture professionals. I'm also active as a psychologist, working with people on existential crisis, career crisis, personal identity crisis. And I really like to use this cross-science contamination because I think if we study in psychology how people overcome a crisis personally as an individual, companies can also learn a lot from that. So I find it very fascinating, this cross-scientific exchange. This session today is going to be on organizational culture and on a less known aspect of it or a more counterintuitive angle. I think you would agree with me and most people would agree that culture really matters. So there is usually not a lot of discussion on this term. And rightfully so, because we have over 100 scientific studies that are saying that there is a strong relationship between organizational culture and performance. There is a direct relationship, and in this relationship, culture comes first. Meaning that a functional culture, a strong culture, a positive culture will positively impact organizational outcomes. And by organizational outcomes, I mean higher performance, higher financial performance, higher employee engagement, loyalty of employees, and the better execution of strategic plans. And we all agree here, I think, and we have scientific evidence, so that's good. But what is less understood is that this is what happens on a good day, when the conditions in which companies operate are stable, they are predictable, they are clear. However, what is interesting and perhaps less understood is that on a bad day, when things are turbulent, when conditions under which companies operate are shaky, disruptive, uncertain, especially in these terms, culture seems to matter even more. Culture seems to be even more important. And what I'm trying to say is that culture definitely matters on a good day, but the less peaceful these times become, the less good these times become, the more culture seems to matter. And it's very important to have, it's a very timely discussion. I'm glad that Culture Code is doing this webinar today, because the times we are going through right now as people and as companies are quite shaky. So this is a very timely discussion. And the fact that culture matters and is even perhaps more important on during critical times. This is not just my amazing innovative idea. Other people came up with that. In fact, well-known futurists, those people who study the trends that shape our future, including the future of work, they said that the more things will change, the more culture will matter. And things change quite a lot right now, right? Because if you look at it, today we stand at the peak of not just one, but at least three converging and potentially catastrophic long-term phenomena. So we see that there is a looming economic recession. You see this nerve-wracking news about the financial systems, the banks going down in the US, and all these signs are giving us stress and uncertainty. As companies, we have to face higher energy prices, disrupted supply channels. We are facing another threat coming from the climate change and the things that companies need to transform or do differently to address that. We are just recovering from a health crisis, and I hope another one is not coming, although there are also all kinds of news. So you see, on their own, each of them is quite stressful. Each of these phenomena is quite stressful, but Now, what we are going through now is that they are converging, and together these trends magnify all the challenges. So, in terms of the business environment, we really live in an unprecedented era of uncertainty when these constant waves of crisis are threatening, you could say, every business, every company in any industry, in any place on earth. So during the pandemic, there was a lot of the discussion that we are entering the times of new normal and we need to learn to live in a new normal. Well, now it seems like we are entering the times of the never normal, and this is what we need to live in. So in face of all these threats, it is what it is. We need to somehow live with it. Millions of managers, leaders, HR managers everybody's desperate to do the right thing, right? To find a new way to survive in this crisis. But leading a company through times like these ones, like times of such instability like we're living right now, this is really a job for the superheroes. And I wanted to acknowledge that this is really a unique time to be a leader, because there are no templates to follow. There are no proven paths or strategies that you know for sure will work. So nothing that we know for sure will be a sure way out of the difficult times and of the crisis. And in psychology, when a person faces a crisis, we always consider this a crossroad. We always say that this is a choice point where you can choose to keep doing what you were doing and things will most likely only get worse, or you can define a new personal strategy. You can reinvent yourself. You can do something differently. And this is also what leaders of companies are required to do right now. Exactly that. They need to define a new direction, to develop a new strategy, to start some kind of transformation project. And they need to do it quickly because, as you know, in crisis, speed is really essential. And sadly, but certainly, I have to say that most of these transformation projects will fail, because that's what they do. The statistics is really bad. So we see that most big transformation projects fail. And in most cases, they miss the mark, not because the new strategy is wrong, not because the new direction is flawed, but because the team cannot carry it out. It cannot properly execute on the strategy. And this is really where culture comes in all this discussion about how does culture matter in a crisis. Culture is really making sure that your team is able to execute on a strategy, on a new strategy. So let's consider for a moment, when times are like they are right now, in these surreal times, right? What do most CEOs and managers, leaders try to do? Well, most of them focus on urgent corporate priorities, on firefighting. And this is understandable and it's good. But the problem is that most often they do it on the expense of softer, more intangible elements, more intangible considerations. And we have quite dependable scientific evidence saying that what makes an organization effective in times of uncertainty or crisis, this has nothing to do with what the conventional business education has taught us. So when discussing what makes a company ineffective in times of crisis, Michael Beer, he's a professor of Harvard Business School, he proposed that it's down to some elements. And the first one is that's about having unclear values and conflicting priorities. Then it's about having ineffective leadership, both on their own, so individually, but also as a leadership team. And it's about lack of cohesiveness when teams are working in silos. So the unclear values and conflicting priorities, this means that the organization lacks a clearly defined, articulated direction and values that are guiding the behavior of team members. And this will be shown in all kinds of conflicts over resources, over priorities. It will translate into a poor execution of the strategy, of course, because you know very well when everything is labeled as a priority, nothing gets done. And the only result that is achieved is that people are super unhappy professionally. They feel overworked, overloaded, and They are simply not operating at their best potential. The second element is about ineffective leaders. And this implies that the leadership team is not speaking a common voice about the strategy, about the values, and this results in low trust in them, but also low trust in the direction that they are proposing in the strategy. And sometimes people don't even understand what the strategy or the new direction even is, because the leadership team is not speaking a common voice. And a very clear sign of this ineffectiveness is if you observe the senior leadership meetings and you see that they spend time on discussing short-term operational details rather than discussing the common vision and the strategy. This is a clear sign for you of this ineffectiveness criteria. And the third one is the poor coordination across teams. So implying that teams work in silos, there is very little organizational solidarity. And if you observe, it looks like each team is defending their own kingdom, and as if they are competing among themselves rather than trying to execute on a direction as a company. And this results again in a lack of honest and open communication, and it makes it painfully hard to execute on any cross initiatives, cross geographic, cross business, cross anything basically, because nobody really is interested in pursuing one common goal. So you see, this professor, this research I'm referring to is not talking about lack of investments or inability to attract investments or a badly implemented reorg or slow downsizing or cost cutting, because it's not about that. It's not that makes a company ineffective in times of crisis. It's really about unclear values, a lack of solidarity, a lack of common vision, and perhaps all of them soft elements, and all of them are elements of organizational culture. So he isn't saying that directly, that culture matters, but all these elements that he's describing, these are culture elements. So we know that companies that we consider great, those that we would call great companies, they all have a well-defined and an inspiring organizational culture. And we know that usually these companies don't start working on culture in the middle of the crisis. Usually they have culture defined as they are entering the crisis. And it's the same with people. A person who has a strong personal identity and understanding of who I am, what are my values, what are my goals, what's my life vision, what are my ambitions and aspirations, this person is much better equipped to go through a personal crisis than a person who doesn't have. And as culture is the group identity of the company, of course, having a clear, solid culture and understanding of who we are as a team will help the company go through the crisis. And this really works by culture being the social glue, because culture doesn't, and it happens not necessarily in the walls of an office, it happens in between the heads of people that are working for the company. And how this works, the social glue, is really, I skip that one, is really by achieving people's emotional involvement. This is what culture does. This is the primary, perhaps, benefit of having a good culture, is that you've achieved an emotional investment on behalf of your team. And, you cannot think of better colleagues or employees than the people who are emotionally invested. If you lead teams, I'm sure you will agree with me that it's really easy to be the leader, the manager of a team of emotionally invested people. These people, they are simply intrinsically driven to do the right thing. They don't need you to control them, to set KPIs, to coordinate, to delegate, to manage them. They will be intrinsically driven to do the right thing. And this level of emotional investment is what is leading to higher organizational solidarity. And this is what helps companies overcome crisis together. Because you see, solidarity, organizational solidarity comes with a bunch of benefits. When people feel one with the team and with the company, there will be a high degree of strategic focus. It makes the company more agile in responding to competitive threats. It's leading to everybody's intolerance to poor performance. And so it brings along a bunch of benefits that are outcome related, not only culture and team related. And in the last part, I wanted to leave you with some practical, because this is all perhaps abstract and difficult to bring it home to how could you apply this information. So I wanted to leave you with some actionable steps of what you could be doing to increase the solidarity within your companies, and this way make your company more prepared to withstand the crisis. And the first one is actually about practicing self-disclosure. Building solidarity always starts with self-disclosure, because we have fairly dependable scientific data saying that when self-disclosure is high, there is an increase in an interpersonal solidarity. Self-disclosure is this act of communicating or revealing information about yourself to another person that they have no other way of finding out. This is not something they can Google. So you self-disclose when you intentionally give another person information about yourself that the other person is not likely to get on her or her own, and that is going to significantly and positively impact your relationship with this person. So in simple words, it really means showing your human side much more at work, to talk much more about what matters to you personally, what books impressed you, what movies you watched and you liked, and perhaps it generated some insights. Talk much more about your dreams, your values, and the bigger purpose that drives you personally. And then the second step that you could take is to cultivate we-ness. Because you see, at heart, humans, we are just tribal creatures. We long to belong. We need to feel connected to a community. And for many of us, work community, it offers this huge source of fulfillment, because we don't just work together. We don't just execute tasks. We celebrate each other's achievements and successes. And we also support each other when we are going through losses or failures, personal and professional, because we need that. It makes us much happier to feel connected to something bigger than ourselves. So belonging not only enriches us personally, but it also helps us perform better, which is important for the company. So I would advise to start creating we-ness, and to do that, we need to build great relationships at work, personal relationships that go beyond those transactional or strictly business discussions, this superficial chit-chat at the coffee machine. So it's about engaging in meaningful discussions and sharing, asking. So not only, as in the first step, I said, practice self-disclosure is offering information about yourself, but also inviting back information from others. So engaging in meaningful discussions about their values and purpose and what drives them personally. And this will help people on the team to simply stick with the team, even when times are tough. So to stay loyal through difficult times rather than just jump the boat, because they will be there for each other, not even for the leader or for the organization. The third one is to stimulate the will to win. Because you see, when there is an outside threat, it has the capacity of increasing intergroup cooperation. We see that the individuals who perceive the group to be under threat, they will tend to protect the group. And if they perceive themselves personally to be under threat, they will protect themselves. So seeing the threat as a common issue and having this strong desire to win, these two are a great combination to make the company strong in the face of crisis. Because if this desire to win is understood by everyone and it's shared by everyone widely, this is a very strong indicator of having a great culture. And I really like to use here this quote from Marcus Aurelius, who was a Stoic philosopher. And he says that the impediment to action advances action, and what stands in the way becomes the way. And I often advise to use this Stoic wisdom, to communicate it to the team, to tell them that the obstacles in the path, they are normal, they are the path, and challenges are opportunities. So in other words, you as a team, you can turn adversity into opportunity to become better, because that's what great companies do. They are not damaged, but they are improved by crisis, just like people. We see that highly functional individuals, they use crisis as a stepping stone to learn something, to become more flexible, more adaptable, and eventually better and happier. The next one is about clarifying values. I think you know that values are a crucial, really central component of organizational culture. And it's values that determine the ability of a team to execute well on the strategy. So for a team, when they have shared values, it's like a moral compass to them that is indicating how they are expected to behave. So good values are not just listed on the website, but they are actually guiding the behavior of the group. And this is what needs to be achieved. That's why values to be shared, they need to be clear. And then they become actively used to make decisions, to make even the toughest decisions, because in a crisis, sometimes some trade-offs are required, some trade-offs are involved. So you need to clarify that something that you as a company stand for is much more important than the personal gain and the personal benefit. And having shared values means that the team understands that the right action is not always the action that most benefits somebody personally. Doing the right thing sometimes requires sacrifice, and it's sometimes based on conflicting interests, and hence it requires strong morality. And when we act with strong moral judgment and we are transcending one's interest, this is when we are inspired by organizational purpose, and it makes our culture stronger and more inspiring. The fifth one is about finding a noble cause, or as I referred just a couple of seconds ago to it as, we could call it purpose, simply inspiring purpose or organizational purpose. And this is really the direction where the company is headed. You probably know that having an inspiring purpose, it's a super important contributor to employee experience. And when the employee experience is great, this is linked to higher levels of employee engagement, to stronger organizational commitment, to higher loyalty, and an increased level of well-being among people. So we see that people who find congruence between their individual purpose, what matters for them personally, and their job, they tend to get more meaning from their roles. And this makes them more productive and more likely to even outperform their peers. I don't know if I should even mention it, but purpose should, of course, be much more than making money, because making money is only inspiring for the shareholders of the company and nobody else. And saying that financials are the only goal of the business, this is really 1970s, it's really old school, and it's not what the younger generations of candidates or even customers are expecting from companies. Because surviving is not a very inspiring goal for anyone, and a company needs to make money to survive. So purpose should go beyond shareholder value and be inspiring. And then the last one, very important, is not just have an inspiring purpose, but also connect it to people, or connect people to the purpose. Because it's naive to hope that once you announce that's the purpose that we came up with, and that these are the values that we came up with, it's naive to expect that people will automatically feel inspired and they will align, because purpose becomes reality for people, even if they understand what it means for them personally and for their work specifically. So only then they will get excited about it. This doesn't mean that you need to rush and communicate this is how our purpose connects to your job description, because we see that in this case top-down communication does not bring desired results, and on the contrary, we see that it's best if the process starts bottom up. So you need to encourage employees to think about what makes work meaningful to them and how they connect the company purpose to their daily tasks and what they do on a daily basis, how they think they make a positive difference through their actions. So then this purpose is more likely to reinforce their commitment, their engagement, and serve as an inspiration. And as a closing word, I really like showing this quote from John Kennedy, and it says that the Chinese use two brushstrokes to write the word crisis. One stands for danger and the other for opportunity. In a crisis, be aware of the danger, but recognize the opportunity. And we all see the danger, we all see the uncertainty that makes us feel very insecure currently in the world, both as people and as companies. But I propose that we can also use this crisis as an opportunity to make our companies better, stronger, healthier, by focusing on improving culture, not taking any other more common sense, perhaps, business decisions, but really making culture the priority. Thank you very much.